The vast chamber of the Galactic Council was a cathedral of power, titanic pillars of gleaming obsidian stretched toward a ceiling lost in shimmering darkness, lit by swirling constellations trapped in crystalline panels. Alien delegates from dozens of species filled the rows of tiered seats, their voices a low murmur that rippled like an approaching storm. At the center, the human envoy stood alone, shoulders squared, but eyes betraying the weight of unspoken urgency. Ambassador Chiara Solis. A voice cut through the din, steady, but trembling with conviction. Esteemed counselors, we come bearing grave news. Beyond the fringe of explored space, a shadow grows, one that consumes planets without warning, reshapes life into something alien. We have detected a threat that endangers every species here. Her words hung in the air, but instead of silence, a ripple of derisive laughter broke out. The Ilary delegate, tall and draped in shimmering silver robes, smiled thinly. Humans, again with your wild tales. Every time you find a strange anomaly, you bring us fears that never materialize. The Ilary's voice was smooth, condescending. Perhaps it's time you stop wasting the Council's time with your outdated paranoia. The murmurs swelled into chuckles and dismissive whispers. Ambassador Solis's jaw clenched. She had delivered this warning once before, and every time the Council turned away. But this time felt different. A cold knot twisted inside her, a premonition as sharp as a knife's edge. As the laughter grew, a subtle tremor rippled through the chamber floor. The great crystalline panels above flickered momentarily, casting the room in fractured shadows. The delegates shifted uneasily. What was that? A Korath delegate asked, narrowing his 4 eyes. It's nothing, barked the presiding elder, an ancient being whose translucent skin pulsed with faint veins of light. We do not entertain baseless fear-mongering. Kira forced herself to meet the elder's gaze. This is no fear, it's fact. The humans have watched the darkness grow. If you ignore it now, it will be too late. The chamber erupted into chaos. Voices clashed, orders to move on were shouted, and a group of human envoys were gently but firmly ushered toward the exit. Kira's heart thundered, but her voice remained clear and loud. They dismiss us. Again, but the shadows don't. Wait for belief. Outside the chamber, the alien metropolis hummed with indifferent life. Towering spires reached into thick, swirling clouds of violet gas, while skyways of glowing light threaded between them like veins. Somewhere far beyond, stars blinked silently, unaware. For now, Kira turned toward her team, eyes blazing. They won't listen. Then we'll make sure someone does. Behind her, a small comm device blinked urgently, garbled signal intercepted from the dark frontier. The message was faint, broken, but unmistakable, a desperate call for help. She swallowed the rising panic. If even the Council refused to heed the warnings, humanity would have to stand alone, because this time, no one else would sound the alarm. In the black silence beyond the last flicker of known stars, the Helios station hung like a lonely sentinel. Its cold metal hull creaked softly under the pressure of space, and through thick observation windows, only endless void stared back, abyss where even light seemed reluctant to tread. Inside the station's cramped command center, Dr. Lyra Voss stared intently at the wavering lines of a crackling communications console. The faintest signal had broken through the cosmic static, a pulse of broken code, barely audible over the background hum. Her fingers hovered uncertainly above the console as the garbled message sputtered again. Distress. Unknown. Consuming. The words stuttered like a dying breath. Lyra's breath caught. The signal was coming from a sector marked abandoned decades ago, beyond the reach of Council patrols, a place no one dared to explore. But her instincts screamed that this was no phantom transmission. Suddenly, the room's lights flickered. A cold shiver ran down her spine as the station's emergency systems hummed to life. Warning of a power anomaly somewhere in the outer hall. Outside, The distant stars seemed to dim, swallowed by a creeping darkness that pulsed just beyond the station's shields. She tapped her wrist comlink, summoning the rest of the small crew. None appeared immediately, each isolated in their own modules, gripped by the same rising unease. This was more than a technical glitch. Then the signal cracked through again, clearer this time. They come. Shadows change. No one left. Warn. Lyra's hands trembled. She replayed the message over and over, trying to piece together its fragmented urgency. The words hinted at something terrible, something that had already swept through the forgotten systems, erasing all life and replacing it with a sinister silence. She sent an encrypted alert to Earth Command, but there was no response. The message bounced back, unopened. Panic threaded her thoughts. If the Council ignored warnings at the core worlds, out here at the edge of everything, no one would believe her. She was alone on the precipice of a disaster no one wanted to admit existed. Outside the observation dome, a shadow passed over the stars. Not a natural eclipse, but something darker, moving with eerie purpose. Lyra's eyes darted toward the scanners. An unidentified object, fluid shape-shifting, was slipping closer, cloaked in an invisible haze that swallowed light. Station to Helios. Report your status. She barked into the comms, voice taut. Silence answered. Her pulse quickened. The darkness wasn't just near it, was inside the void, hunting as the station's shields flickered under unexplained strain. Lyra realized the chilling truth. The threat was no distant rumor. It was already here, creeping closer in the silence between stars, and no one was coming. The void whispered its secrets. But humanity's call for help was swallowed by indifference. Lyra's fingers clenched into fists. Alone, isolated, and unheard, would have to fight the darkness on her own. Because sometimes, the quietest cries are the most deadly. The scout ship Vigilant cut through the star-speckled void like a hunter stalking unseen prey. Its sleek hull glinted faintly against the swirling blackness of the nebula of Lost. Echoes a place where light itself seemed to warp and fade. Commander Ral Tokar, a veteran of countless patrols, sat rigid in the cockpit, eyes narrowed on the flickering sensor array. The transmission from Helios station was vague but urgent. Unknown entity, shape-shifting, deadly. The kind of threat whispered about in old ghost stories never seen, only feared. Keep your eyes open, Tokar ordered the crew, his voice low but steel-hard. We don't know what we're dealing with. The nebula's mists writhed like living smoke, tendrils of dark gas curling around their ship, blurring sensors and scrambling readings. Suddenly, the console screamed a burst of static, followed by an explosion of data. Multiple targets, moving fast. No identifiable form, the sensor officer stammered. Before anyone could react, a shadow detached itself from the nebula's shifting silhouette that flickered and morphed between forms. Neither fully solid nor completely intangible. Shields. Up, Tokar shouted. The shadow lunged like a predator, slamming into the Vigilant's hull with a force that jolted the entire ship. Lights flickered, alarms blared, and the ship shuddered violently. Hull breach in Sector 3. The engineer yelled, "Got crew," scrambled to damage control stations as the shapeshifter morphed again, now resembling a grotesque amalgam of every species the Vigilant had encountered. Its eyes gleamed with cold, alien intelligence. We're dealing with something beyond anything cataloged. Tokar growled through clenched teeth. The ship's weapons fired blindly, but the creature slipped through beams of energy like smoke, striking again and again, tearing through armor plates. One by one, crew members Falcott changed, or lost to the shadow dot in the cockpit. Tokar's come crackled with frantic voices. We're losing control, shields failing. It's inside the ship. Prepare to evacuate, Tokar ordered grimly. If we don't warn the Council, no one else will. As escape pods jettisoned into the cold void, Tokar watched the creature close in, its form flickering like a nightmare made real. "Remember this," he whispered to himself. "They laughed at the humans. They'll regret it." Far away, back, on the council worlds, the laughter continued, oblivious to the silent predator already hunting within their own ranks, because sometimes the greatest threats were the faces of friends. The stars blinked coldly as the ragtag fleet gathered at the edge of the Null Rift, a dark scar in space where no official patrol dared linger. Here, abandoned ships from forgotten wars drifted like ghostly tombstones, and the air was thick with tension. Ambassador Kira Solis paced the cramped command bridge of the Resolute, her jaw tight, eyes sharp beneath furrowed brows. Around her, aliens from fringe worlds, outcasts, rebels, and those the Galactic Council had dismissed stood shoulder to shoulder, their faces a patchwork of fear, skepticism, and fierce determination. "They laughed when we warned them," Kira said, voice low but burning with quiet fury. "Now the darkness moves closer. It's time we stop waiting for permission." The fleet commander, a hulking Krath named Vornak, grunted, his 4 eyes scanning the flickering star maps projected in the room. "We have no choice but to trust each other," he rumbled. "The Council's arrogance is our undoing." Outside, the Resolute ships of all sizes and origins drifted in eerie silence, their hulls scarred by battles long past. Some bore the faded emblems of fallen coalitions. Others showed crude, hastily painted symbols, marks of desperation and survival. Kira's fingers hovered over a console, sending encrypted messages to Earth and scattered allies. Response was scarce, fragmented, but a few brave souls answered the call. Suddenly, a chilling alert tore through the ship's comma ripple in space, a disturbance that made every sensor scream. Shadows danced beyond the fleet's protective shields. "Enemy vessels incoming," the tactical officer reported, voice tight with urgency. "But they're unlike anything we've seen. Fluid, shifting, impossible to target." The room fell, deathly silent. "They've found us," Kira whispered. Outside, the void writhed as enemy ships emerged from the shadows, sleek, black, and morphing, their forms shifting like smoke caught in a storm. The airlock hissed as soldiers rushed to battle stations, weapons primed and fingers clenched on triggers. "Hold the line," Vornak ordered. "We fight not just for survival, but for every voice the Council has silenced." As the first salvo erupted into the darkness, beams of energy clashed against shape-shifting hulls that seemed to absorb or evade every attack. The enemy adapted swiftly, slipping through gaps in the fleet's formation, striking at the heart of the Resolute. Explosions rocked the ship, lights flickered, and alarms wailed. Kira locked eyes with Vornak. "This ends now." With a fierce cry, she activated the ancient beacon they had recovered from a forgotten war, a device said to amplify human ingenuity and spirit in ways no alien technology could match. The beacon pulsed, sending waves of shimmering light that danced across the battlefield like wildfire. The enemy faltered, their shifting forms destabilizing under the strange energy, but the battle was far from over. As ships collided in blinding flashes, Kira realized this was just the beginning. To win, they would need more than firepower. They'd need trust, cunning, and the unbreakable will of those who had been dismissed and forgotten, because sometimes the strongest alliances are born from the deepest scars. The galaxy thrummed with uneasy calm, but beneath the surface, an unseen terror slipped silently like a shadow across countless worlds. No alarms blared, no warnings sounded, only subtle changes that few noticed until it was too late. On the bustling capital of Viridian, the Grand Council chambers gleamed with polished crystal and golden accents. Delegates from dozens of species gathered, their voices echoing in heated debate about trade routes and political alliances. But amid them, a new face smiled, a delegate whose eyes flickered momentarily with an unnatural blue glow before settling into practiced warmth. This was no ordinary ambassador. Elsewhere, In the crowded streets of Ilra Prime, citizens went about their day unaware. Shops bustled, children laughed, but in the shadows, something moved in indistinct form, slipping between the crowds, unseen but always watching. The changeling was among them, a predator, wearing a perfect mask. In a dimly lit room, an old human analyst pored over data streams, frowning at subtle anomalies, disappearing officials. Sudden policy shifts, whispers of confusion spreading like wildfire. She tapped the secure come link urgently. They've infiltrated the highest levels, she whispered. We're running out of time. Back on the Resolute, Ambassador Kira Solis stared at the screen displaying incoming reports from allied networks. The enemy wasn't just attacking with brute force, it was poisoning from within, erasing identities, replacing allies with imposters who worked silently to unravel resistance. We fight enemies we cannot see, Kira murmured. Their deadliest weapon is silence. Suddenly, the ship's alarms shattered, the quiet breach detected in a lower deck. Soldiers scrambled as a shapeshifter slipped through the corridors, morphing between forms to evade capture. The chase was brutal. Every corner hid potential danger. Every shadow concealed a threat. The creature struck swiftly, disabling systems, sowing chaos. Kira clenched her fists. If we don't find them now, the whole fleet is compromised. The battle for survival had become a desperate hunt in the darkness, a war of shadows where trust was a weapon as fragile as glass. Because sometimes, the deadliest enemy is the one who walks among you, unseen and unstoppable. The galaxy thrummed with uneasy calm, but beneath the surface, an unseen terror slipped silently like a shadow across countless worlds. No alarms blared, no warnings sounded, only subtle changes that few noticed until it was too late. On the bustling capital of Viridian, the Grand Council chambers gleamed with polished crystal and golden accents. Delegates from dozens of species gathered, their voices echoing in heated debate about trade routes and political alliances. But amid them a new face smiled, a delegate whose eyes flickered momentarily with an unnatural blue glow before settling into practiced warmth. This was no ordinary ambassador. Elsewhere, in the crowded streets of Ilra Prime, citizens went about their day unaware. Shops bustled, children laughed, but in the shadows, something moved in indistinct form, slipping between the crowds, unseen but always watching. The changeling was among them, a predator wearing a perfect mask. In a dimly lit room, an old human analysts pored over data streams, frowning at subtle anomalies, disappearing officials. Sudden policy shifts, whispers of confusion spreading like wildfire. She tapped the secure come link urgently. They've infiltrated the highest levels, she whispered. We're running out of time. Back on the Resolute, Ambassador Kira Solis stared at the screen, displaying incoming reports from allied networks. The enemy wasn't just attacking with brute force, it was poisoning from within, erasing identities, replacing allies with imposters who worked silently to unravel resistance. We fight enemies we cannot see, Kira murmured. Their deadliest weapon is silence. Suddenly, the ship's alarms shattered, the quiet breach detected in a lower deck. Soldiers scrambled as a shapeshifter slipped through the corridors, morphing between forms to evade capture. The chase was brutal. Every corner hid potential danger. Every shadow concealed a threat. The creature struck swiftly, disabling systems, sowing chaos. Kira clenched her fists. If we don't find them now, the whole fleet is compromised. The battle for survival had become a desperate hunt in the darkness, a war of shadows, where trust was a weapon as fragile as glass. Because sometimes, the deadliest enemy is the one who walks among you, unseen and unstoppable. The battle had pushed the Resolute to its limits. Hull breaches hissed like wounded beasts, and corridors flooded with emergency red light that cast long shadows on the frightened faces of the crew. Every system groaned under strain, but the real enemy was far more insidious, an enemy that thrived in the cracks, in the fractured trust among allies, Ambassador Kira Solis stood at the center of the command deck, eyes blazing with fierce determination. Beside her, the ancient beacon pulsed steadily, casting a strange glow that pushed back the darkness, creeping through the ship's veins. But even as the light fought to hold the shadows at bay, whispers began to spread, secrets, stolen, lies, sown by the changelings that walked among them, cloaked in human skin and alien flesh alike. Friendships shattered overnight. Commanders questioned their own crews. The veil of unity was tearing. Suddenly, the ship's comms erupted with frantic voices. "Intruder in the bridge. We've lost contact with the outer fleet. The beacon is flickering." Kira's heart pounded. The creature had breached their last stronghold. In the chaos, a silhouette emerged, fluid and shifting, flickering between forms like smoke in a gust of wind. The shapeshifter moved with terrifying grace, eyes burning cold with alien intelligence. "Your resistance ends here," it hissed, voice a distorted echo. Kira raised her weapon, but the creature was faster, vanishing into the shadows before she could fire. The ship trembled as explosions rocked its core. Suddenly, the beacon's light faltered, dimming in a cruel twist of fate. The darkness surged forward, swallowing corridors, snuffing out hope like a candle in a storm. But in that moment of deepest despair, Kira's voice rang out, unwavering. "We fight together." From the shattered command deck, survivors rallied. Old grudges were set aside, fears swallowed, and the shattered veil of trust began to mend, woven anew by the unyielding will to survive. Because sometimes, it's not the light or the darkness that wins, but the strength to keep fighting in between. The final battle unfolded in the heart of the void, a swirling tempest of light and shadow, where stars seemed to flicker in fear. The Resolute limped through the chaos, battered but unbroken, its hull scorched by relentless assaults. Outside, the shape-shifting enemy surged like a living storm, seeking to crush the last spark of resistance. Ambassador Kira Solis stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the ancient beacon glowing at the ship's center. The device hummed with raw energy, a pulse of hope amidst the darkness. Around her, the fleet held its ground, battered but resolute, a testament to the unity born from scars and sacrifice. Suddenly, the ship's alarms screamed, shields failing, systems collapsing. The enemy was breaching their defenses. Kira's voice cut through the chaos. "Activate the beacon's full power. We end this here." The crew scrambled, fingers flying over consoles as the beacon flared, sending waves of shimmering light rippling across the void. The enemy convulsed, its shifting form unraveling, revealing the nightmare beneath a twisted, pulsing core of pure darkness. But the beacon's power was draining fast, and with it, the Resolute's chance at survival. Kira gritted her teeth, stepping forward to place her hands on the beacon's interface. Energy surged through her, a fierce connection bridging past and present, human and machine. She felt the weight of every warning ignored, every dismissed voice, and the burden of humanity's forgotten legacy. With a final cry, she unleashed the beacon's full might. A blinding explosion of light tore through the darkness, shattering the enemy's core and sending shockwaves rippling across the stars. The void trembled, and silence followed, heavy but victorious. The fleet remained, battered but alive, as the dust settled. Kira gazed out at the quiet stars, witnesses to the battle that had been dismissed for too long. "Let this be a warning," she said softly, "that ignoring the quiet cries only invites the darkness in." The galaxy had learned the hard way, because sometimes the greatest victory is simply surviving long enough to sound the alarm.